Okay, YouTubers, this is the Angry Prepper. So today's video, we're going to talk about, or rather continue, the aftermath of an EMP. This is going to be part 3. Now, part 1 and 2 were done a few months ago. I gave it a little bit of a break. We have 3 and 4. And then part 5 is going to be like a year later kind of deal. I'm not going to do it a year later, but we're going to jump into a year later in part 5. Anyway, with this being said, guys, part 3, we're going to talk about the first night of an EMP and the things that you're going to see, maybe have to deal with, and the chaos that we're probably going to witness across the country. Now, we're going to witness it across the country, not through way of obviously social media or the news, because the power is going to be out nationwide. But for those who have CB radios that are still running, or ham radios that are still running, especially if they were protected and they have a battery source or power source of some kind, they're going to be communicating what's going on through the nation, should you also have a ham radio or some kind of listening device that can tap into that. So, first night in multiple cities, you're going to see people probably cooking out. Again, depends on when this happens. I think even in the wintertime, you'll see people barbecuing throughout the nation. So they're probably going to take the meat that's in their freezer and they're going to cook it. Now, for these people are going to be those that are going to be eating their food probably within the first day or so, if not the first day, thinking that the power is going to come back on, especially if they are not listening to a ham radio or some kind of listening device, knowing what's going on. Now, for a lot of us that have the method or way of listening to ham radios or CB radios, whatever that is, or channeling into those, we're probably going to know right out of the gates what this is, especially listening to people who are transmitting the emergency. But for those that are not listening, they're probably going to be burning through their food again pretty quickly, thinking that power is going to come back on. So a lot of us who have meat in the freezer that might be thawing out or going bad, we're going to start canning. We're going to fire up our either wood burning stoves, which is pretty hard to do, or we're going to fire up our gas run or propane run tanks, and we're going to be canning the rest of that stuff that way. If you have a good power source, you might even freeze dry the rest of your stuff if you can. Though freeze drying, keep in mind, takes a lot of power. So you might not want to do that, but you might want to can the rest of your stuff. So the first night, guys, is going to set the pace for what is to come. And obviously with no power, like I said, you have people cooking out, having drinking parties and all kinds of stuff throughout the nation, sorry. They have people having roof parties, you have people having backyard party, pool parties, barbecuing, carrying on. And that's that element. The other element, the bad, is going to be out there running amok. Crime is going to spike, skyrocket, and everything in between as soon as the sun goes down. And probably even before that. But as soon as the sun goes down, you're going to see major looting everywhere. Because if the power's out, people are going to be like, well, the cameras are not working. Now, some places have backup generators that might still record, but during the EMP, doesn't matter. No, it doesn't. So you're going to see that bullshit going on. You're going to see a lot of rioting. You're going to see a lot of shootings. You're going to see a lot of stabbings. You're going to see gang rivals finally going after one another, because who's going to stop them? If police officers can identify what's going on early in it, a lot of them are going to leave to go home. If they can identify that it's an EMP. If firemen can identify it's an EMP, they're going to go home. They're either going to try to drive home and or walk home if they can't drive. Depends on how badly damaged the vehicles are. Now, in New York City, the 1977 blackout was exactly what it's going to look like, but probably even worse. Probably more violence, a lot more looting, and a lot more burning of stores. That's the other thing you're going to see. You're going to see stores and buildings burning left and right at this point, especially if people, screw up with a candle or something, knock it over. You're definitely going to see fires, and then you're going to see businesses burning down. Now, in 1977, we had 7.4 million people here in New York City. In 2022, we have 8.8 million people in the city. So that's more people, and we're probably at 9 million now, being that we have an influx of immigrants and shit coming here. We're probably at 9 million. Even so, There's more people now than there was then. So that's more violence, more crimes being committed, more cops having to stop more things. Now, again, with the way things are, how many cops are not doing their job because they're handcuffed by politicians? That's now. Power's on, everything's good. A blackout with all of that shit going on, and they know it is an EMP, you're going to see mayhem in the streets. You're going to see gangs either rival with each other almost immediately, or you're going to see gangs band together almost immediately, causing a havoc and gaining street cred and blocks, or territory rather, through this whole process in the first night. Again, if they can identify how bad this is. Now, to the whole looters part, looting, guys, is going to be out of control. It's going to be exponentially bad. I think you're going to see more people involved in looting because they're like, well, the power's out, no one can see me, have at it. The thing about looters is, because they're morons, they're going to be stealing shit they can't use. They're going to be stealing TV sets, stereo systems, Bluetooth systems, iPads, all those other phones. They're going to be using things that they can't use. And even if those phones were protected because they were in a room underground or whatever it is, after that battery runs out, then what? To boot, you can't connect to anything anyway. No internet, no phone signal, right? So people are going to be stealing things that are not going to make their lives better. Now, you might have some white folks, and you might have some black people in the country that are going to steal things they can use. Propane tanks, a grill perhaps, things that are going to make their life a little easier. Where in the city, people are going to be stealing shit that is completely and utterly useless. The first night, guys, in the city will be nothing short of a nightmare. It will be the absolute things nightmares are made of. Because in certain cities, crime is going to be fucking 10 times worse, while other cities, you'll just see pockets of issues. In those cities, the smaller cities, if you will, cops are going to be able to handle those smaller issues. Whereas big cities like New York, LA, Detroit, they're going to see some outrageous shit, and cops are only going to be able to respond to immediate emergencies. So again, if they see looting during a blackout, especially if it's citywide, they're not going to sit there and be concerned about someone stealing shit when they probably have cops calling for 85s or 1013s and requesting assistance. They're going to be responding to that. They're going to be passing looters. They're probably going to even be passing people beating up other people trying to get to that 13. So now the 1013, sorry, which means a cop is in distress or the cop needs help, backup. Different states, I think the code is different. But anyway, they're gonna be running past people doing other crimes. They're not gonna be getting involved. Now, obviously, if they see someone shooting somebody else, they might stop. But again, to get to their fellow cop in this point in time is way more of an importance than them watching somebody else get shot. And listen, I don't blame them. Because if all hell's breaking loose, you got to depend on one another and not the two strangers that are going at it with each other. Now, during this whole incident, you're going to have gangs shooting out with one another. You're going to have cops shooting it out with criminals. You're just going to have citizens shooting it out with citizens. Depends on the state that you live in. Now, obviously, people are going to take this opportunity because opportunists are everywhere. They're going to take the opportunity to shoot at cops because they're under a cover of dark, right? Though you have headlights from your cars, that's only going to work for so long. And street lights are out. So you're going to see a lot of heinous things go down because who can see who, especially when people are still wearing a mask in cities like New York. So there's definitely going to be shootouts throughout the entire country. You might even have people trying to approach certain properties, and you're going to see shootouts with that. You're going to see a lot of gunfights. And the gunfights, guys, are not going to go down like you think they are. They do not go down like the movies. If you watched enough shootout videos and seen shootouts in person and been in those situations, they don't go down like the movie. You don't move tactically and you guys are knocking on each other's helmets and let's go this way. It don't work out that way. It doesn't work out according to plan, and especially not with police officers. Maybe SWAT or ESU, but definitely not regular cops. It looks more chaotic. Predator 2, the beginning of Predator 2 with Danny Glover, where they were at that shootout with the Mexican dudes. That's pretty much what it's going to look like. It's just going to look like a shit show. Now, the one part of the crime that's going to skyrocket is rapes. Now, rapes, for some reason, are skyrocketing here in the city now with lights and shit on and cops still on the street. Rapes have picked up here in the city. forget about during a blackout, especially a prolonged blackout. You're going to see an absorbent amount of rapes. You're probably going to see an absorbent amount of kidnappings as well. Women and kids entering the sex trafficking industry through way of a blackout. That's one of the things that's gonna pick up almost immediately, especially if it's a prolonged blackout, and especially people start figuring out that the power's not coming back on anytime soon. Food and water, guys, that's going to disappear almost immediately, especially amongst the smart people. So while you have people looting TV sets and shit like that, you're going to have another group of people like, yo, we need some food and we need some water and we need some canned goods where we don't have to rely on our fridge. Those are people, there are people that do think that way. So they are going to go to the supermarkets and strip the supermarkets clean. Every supermarket in the city to be stripped clean. Even your big places like Restaurant Depot, they're probably going to be not picked clean, but you're going to have a lot of people in them. I would almost head there immediately. Now, me as a prepper, I had no reason to go there. We got what we have. But if I wasn't a prepper, I would head to a Restaurant Depot or BJ's or Sam's Club almost immediately, raiding the shit out of those places. And I would try to go there under the cover of darkness and get as much food as I can for my family. That's if I was a different dude. But being a prepper, that's why I prep. So I'd avoid doing shit like that because you're risking your life being out in that environment trying to get food and water for your family. Meanwhile, shootouts are going down. You got people looting the store. You might have somebody else that wants that packet of water you have. Now you two are going to get into a fist fight or a shooting. So you have to keep that in mind. That's why we prep so that we don't end up in that situation. Now, if you are trying to get back home at night, which I strongly suggest against, you should do it during the day or daylight. There's a little more, you can see a lot more in the day. But then again, they can see you coming as well. But if you have to move at night, guys, keep three things in mind. Location, surrounding, and neighborhood. If you are walking through a known bad neighborhood that you know is bad, if you're walking through that neighborhood, don't stop. Try to pick the less traveled route through those neighborhoods. Try to stay under the cover of dark and move with a purpose. Don't move through thinking, oh man, this is really dark here. Don't do that shit, and try not to use your flashlight as much as possible when moving through bad neighborhoods because people will spot it and want to see what you are or who you are. And if it's a gang, you could be toast. So try to move as best as you can without your flashlight. I memorized almost this entire city like the back of my hand. I can move through the dark in this city because I was born and raised here. Now you dump me in another place like, I don't know, Detroit or LA, I'm pretty much going to get turned around and lost. So if you are native to that neighborhood or you're local to that neighborhood, you should know that place like the back of your hand. And you should be able to move through the darkness with limited light use. I'm not saying cut it out altogether, but I'm saying limit the light use. Location and surrounding, guys. Again, those two things play a role because if you are, let's say you walked 5-6 hours now, but you want to lay down, you're tired, you got to pick a location to put your tent, and you got to be aware of your surroundings once you pick that tent location. You want to put your tent preferably in a park where there's a lot of brush so that you can hide out there a little into the sunrise, if you will. But keep in mind, a lot of parks, like here in New York City, I don't know how they are in other states or other cities, but here in New York City, a lot of the parks here have giant fucking rodents. They have giant rats and they have raccoons. Raccoons are curious like you wouldn't believe here in New York. And rats, well, they just see something, a new obstacle. They might run around it, but if that obstacle's there for a longer period of time, which you shouldn't be there longer than a couple of hours, if it's there a long period of time, they start to get curious as well and shoot through the fabric. So you got to keep in mind when you're moving, pick your surroundings. You got to know what animals are around it, how many rats are in that park, how many just rodents are in that park. Your location is going to dictate where you put that tent. You're going to put it out in the open, you're going to put it in the brush. If you can't pitch a tent in the brush and you try for an open location, make sure the open location is at least hidden, an alleyway or something. Sleeping in somebody's car is a bad idea. I know some people are like, oh, I'll just crash in people's car. Don't do that shit because you don't know whose car you're sleeping in. You can sleep in the wrong car and end up missing forever. So 80-60, idea, if it's an abandoned building, check the floors. Go in the abandoned building, check the floors. If you don't see anything dangerous, try to pick a spot in that building, get a couple of hours rest, and then keep it moving. Now, when you're getting up to move, guys, for the next morning, if you will, try to do that part in a cover of darkness as well. I mean, utilize the dark as best as you can. Maybe you want to move and dark and then sleep during the day. You could do that, but again, if you're going to sleep during the day, you got to make sure your tent can blend with the surrounding. Those bright yellow and bright orange tents are not going to help you out in this scenario. You're going to need something more of a duller color that doesn't stand out as much. Hell, you can even look like a homeless person sleeping in the spot, and people will leave you alone for the most part, at least in the beginning of that EMP attack. But as time goes on, they might not leave you alone. So keep that in the back of your head. Now, the most important thing you should have on you guys, besides your bug out bag, your get home bag, if you will, is cash. You should have cash on you, because cash is going to get you through a lot of things. There could be stores opened along the way that is still open, that might still be standing. They might sell you food and water, or at the very least water, if you have cash. So make sure you have cash in small denominations. I would say singles. Try not to do $5 or $10. Try to keep everything in singles. It's easier for you to spend that than it is to sit there with 5 10s, and this person can't split it. If you have singles, that's going to go a long way. Now, after all of that being said and done, if you guys are sheltering in place because you're not moving anywhere during this EMP event or aftermath of EMP, fill your tub up with water immediately. That's probably I probably should have said that in the beginning of the video, but make sure you fill up your tub with water immediately after knowing what's going on. Hell, even if it's just a blackout and if you're not sure for the EMP, fill up your tub immediately. Bust out the water bob, fill this water bathtub water bladder up. Get it done. And if you don't need it, fuck it. If the power comes back on in 3, 4, 5 hours, fine. You dump the water bag, the water bob, and you throw it away, because essentially the only way to get the water out is to cut the bag open and let it drain out. And then that's it. Then you just buy a new one. But it's better to have that 100 gallons of water ready to rock and roll, and then find out it's a long-term event, and you're good to go. Now, you don't fill it up because you think it's a short-term event, and it turns into a long-term event. Well, then you're screwed. Now you're 100 gallons less of water. If you have enough water hidden throughout your house, you just added 100 gallons of drinking water and cleaning water. Just keep that in the back of your head. Anyway, guys, other than that, this is The Angry Prepper. Thank you for watching.